For my global learning project, I decided that for my interaction, I wanted to be a guest at an event that is important in Blake's culture. So I decided to attend a Shabbat dinner at the Hillel with Blake. The Hillel is a student Jewish organization here on Michigan State's campus. And Shabbat dinner is a dinner that is held in the Jewish religion every Friday of the year. It is celebrated in many different ways depending on what type of Jew you are, whether you're Orthodox, conservative, or Hasidic. You all celebrate Shabbat dinners, but some celebrate it in a more strict manner than others. So before going to Hillel, I knew what a Shabbat dinner was. I knew that it was celebrated on Fridays, but I kind of always thought of it as an informal event and that it was usually celebrated with your family. I thought you just had family over for a nice Friday night dinner and then like your Friday night plans were open after that. And I don't think I was wrong in what I assumed it was, but I was surprised to learn that it can be celebrated so differently for so many people. So my thoughts before the interaction is that I was afraid I was going to be the only non-Jewish person there and that I was going to feel like really left out and like a complete outsider. I also just had it in my head that everyone would be at one long table eating dinner and you wouldn't really be able to talk to other people or really anything like that, and that it was some very formal event. I was also really nervous that everyone was going to be speaking in Hebrew and that I wouldn't really know what was going on and that I would be confused for most of the dinner. But so I was pretty much wrong on all of my thoughts and feelings that I had before going to Hillel. But I wanted to talk about what I noticed about Blake during my interactions at Hillel and the Shabbat dinner is that Blake knew almost everyone there who was at the dinner. And she had actually told me that it's part of the Jewish community. Like, if you're Jewish, most likely you know all of the other Jewish people. And they have a term for it, and they call it Jewish geography. And she said, like, you can ask her about a Jewish person at a school, another school, like University of Michigan or Indiana, and she will most likely know them just because of Jewish geography. I was really, really intrigued by that. But I asked her about it because I was like, how do you know everybody here? So that was one thing I noticed about Blake during the interaction. I also noticed that Blake was really involved. She knew like all of the head leaders at Hillel, but that wasn't surprising to me because I mentioned in my previous vlog that Blake was on, like, she had a position at the Hillel, so she's very involved in it. But she was like leading things, which I thought was really interesting and really cool. It was really cool to watch her have such like a pivotal role in what was going on. I also noticed that like Blake made it very clear that I was a guest, and I mean that in the best way possible. So at the table, there's also it's not one long table. It's a lot of smaller tables. And in the Jewish religion, you drink a certain wine called Manischewitz, and so there was 2 bottles of Manischewitz on each table. And I say that Blake made it feel like I was the guest because she poured my wine for me. The food is like it's like served in like kind of a buffet style, but they put it on your table and you just pass it around. She made sure that I was served first, and she'd put the food on my plate for me. It was very nice and very polite of her, and I just thought that was interesting. Like, I'm here with Blake, and Blake will take care of me. So one thing that I thought was really interesting was at the beginning of the Shabbat dinner, they do a prayer, and they speak in Hebrew. I just kind of sat there and I paid attention, but I obviously wasn't very aware of what was going on. But they took some challah bread, which is Jewish bread, and they ripped it apart and they started throwing it at us. And I was like, first I was like, kind of like, okay, maybe this is like a joke or something. But Blake said it's just something that they do, and they do it at the beginning of every Shabbat. And then I noticed that a few people got up and went and washed their hands afterwards, after the prayer was over. And I asked Blake about it, and she said, if you are a very strict Jew, you will wash your hands after every time a prayer is said, which I thought that was really interesting. Blake did not get up and wash her hands. She said her family's pretty strict, but to an extent, and she doesn't follow that where you wash your hands after a prayer. To reflect back on my interaction at the Hillel, I was really surprised with how friendly everyone was. They were so welcoming and they were so nice, and I just explained, like, I'm not Jewish, I'm actually Catholic, but I'm kind of just here to get a feel for what this is all about. But they could not have been nicer, and I did not feel uncomfortable at all. They were so welcoming, very easy to hold a conversation with. I actually realized I had classes with some of the girls, which was really fun because it was, a new friend was made. I also realized that there was all forms or levels of the Jewish religion present, like I said, conservative, Hasidic, or Orthodox. Like every single branch was represented, which was really cool because, again, different forms of the religion, but all celebrating together. Going back to how it's all celebrated differently, but when you come here at Michigan State, you can just be in your community and really immerse yourself and bring yourself back to your roots. The thing that I was the most surprised about was that it coincided with Greek life. So I noticed that at one table there was a group of boys and all of them were wearing a suit and tie. And I asked Blake about it, and she said, oh, those are boys from AE which is a fraternity here on Michigan State's campus, and she told me that AE is predominantly Jewish. So as a pledge, they are all required to attend Shabbat dinner every Friday of the Hillel until they become an initiated member. I thought that was really interesting, but I also thought it was kind of cool because it's a part of their culture and their religion, and that's something they grew up doing, and now that they get to have that with their fraternity brothers, I can imagine that's a pretty cool experience. But I was really surprised that it coincided with Greek life because I never really saw your Greek life community and your religion meshing, but I think that's a pretty cool experience that they're able to do that. When I reflect on my interaction and I make connections back to class, I really think about the iceberg model of culture because they always say that, at the tip of the iceberg, it's things that we see on a regular basis about people, but at the bottom of the iceberg, it's things that you wouldn't necessarily know. And for one of those things, it's definitely like your religion, your beliefs, and your customs. And I was able to see Blake's underneath part of her iceberg. I was able to see what she does on a Friday night. I was able to see the prayers that she says in her religion. It was really cool, and I just feel like during that time I was really using a visual representation of the iceberg model of culture, and it kind of helped me to have this more ethno-relative mindset because I was no longer using my culture and my religion as a frame of reference. I was having more of the mindset, so this is what I would do at a Friday night dinner as a Catholic, but this is what Blake does on a Friday night at a Jewish dinner, and neither one is right or wrong. They're just both options to celebrate your Friday or your dinner or your religion, and I think that really allowed me to better my ethno-relative mindset. I really enjoyed my time at the Shabbat, and I am really happy that I chose Blake as my global learning project partner because I really feel like I'm learning a lot from her and am really expanding my mindset as a cultural learner.